Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Schoelles, and our names are not showing up. Oh well, I am Sandy. Here's Antonio. Let me make sure I don't. Okay, I had a little echo, but it's great to have you. I will explain to you guys tonight. Antonio's on not on Wi-Fi. He's using cellular, so we're going to do our best. If there's a little bit of funny noises, oh well. It's great to see you. Hi.
Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for having me
Yeah.
on. I can't this important topic.
It's a very important topic, and I am going to start talking about the EPA. We've got a very busy show. We've got a very newsy show. Um, Maybe while I'm talking, you may want to turn your mute on a little bit, Antonio, since we have a little bit of background noise. And but don't forget to turn it back on. And let me just say hi to everybody really quick. It's great to see all of you. Looney and Kim, thank you for moderating. Veg and Robert and so many people here. It's great. Poppy, Deirdre. Hi, Deirdre. It's great to have you with us. We do have a packed show. So even though our names are not up here for some reason, whatever, the stupid thing didn't work, you know who we are. Anyway, we're going to be going to a screen share, but I am going to start out with a little video because we are going to show you who wrote the Project 2025 EPA 13 chapter. She is definitely something. So hang on. Let's start with Mandy.
Hottie toddy fit check. Boots, hemline, purse, my favorite shoes. Clear purse is an SEC football must. Vault Society, Denson Hollis. Outfit, Philly Boo. Headband, Core Pilates. My daughter bought this for me. And most importantly, Y'all Fired, courtesy of Skyhorse Publishing. Y'all check it out on Amazon. It's a must.
Okay, so she is the person that wrote the EPA Chapter 13. And she's really something else, but I'm going to play one more thing.
You're the former EPA Chief of Staff in the Trump administration, and my understanding is you authored the Project 2025 chapter on the EPA. Do you still support Project 2025's proposal to reinstate Schedule F, which would lead to the firing of 50,000 expert civil servants?
Absolutely. And I think there's more quote unquote civil servants that should be gone because the growth of the federal bureaucracy actually gets in the way of agencies fulfilling important missions like protecting public health and the environment.
And do you have an interest in serving in a future Trump administration should he win?
I do not.
Do you believe that the president should, if Trump wins, that he should implement the Project 2025 recommendation of firing these civil servants?
I think it's the president's prerogative to determine what policies he ultimately wants to
What would
implement.
your recommendation be?
There's a lot of recommendations that I would suggest that the president embrace from an overarching governance
Would that
perspective.
include the firing of the 50,000 civil servants, the Schedule F?
Yeah, I actually have a book coming out called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp, and I go step by step of what I would suggest the president do to actually right-size the federal government.
Is it fair to say that there are other people who share your view who will be in his administration?
There's a lot of people in the conservative movement that share this view.
Good morning, Mississippi, and happy Friday. I'm Mandy Gunasekara. I'm going to be filling in for the Paul Gallo Show today. As you can see, I'm here in the studio. We are getting things set up. We've got a ton of news to cover, even though, yes, it is Friday. There's still a lot going on. And then we've got a really great lineup. Let me read through that really quick. At 7:20, we are going to have Leah Ferretti, who is the director of Mississippi Ready. At 8:05, Jackie Reid, who is a trucker and the
she
National
wrote chapter
Truck
13
Driving
of how
Champion
to
from
pretty
Mississippi
much gut
that
the
we're gonna be talking
EPA.
to. After him, we're going to have Congressman Michael Guest that I happened to be with last night in Washington, D.C. He wanted to come in and give us a recap of what is going on there. And then finally, we will have Dixon Williams with Super Talk Mississippi Sports Director to wrap it up. It's going to be a great show. We hope you tune in.
So that is Mandy. What do you think, Antonio?
Yeah, I thought that she's classic. We've seen this kind before. It's definitely harping back to the Reagan administration and their attacks upon the EPA.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's new in American discourse. Unfortunately, it's found itself in a new packaging 2025. But nothing she said was off the agenda from things that we've heard from the worst of the right, particularly during the Reagan administration and even during the Bush administration.
Right?
And of course, the former Trump administration. She's from the former Trump administration.
She is. And here, let's get this picture. I just want to show you guys another. Remember him, Inhofe? Well, there she is. She was with Inhofe, so you know what kind of character we are.
And that smile on her.
What?
Look at that little smirk she has.
I know, little smirk. And she's an attorney. I don't think she probably graduated to the top of her class because she definitely isn't working alone. But it's very interesting. So we've got articles and things to talk about to start out, and I'm going to handle some of this, the EPA stuff, and Tony's going to go into the NOAA and the National Weather Service. But we really just, really wanted to show you this is the personality we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. So let's get started. I'm going to show you guys, and welcome on a Saturday night. I know last night we should have been here, but my fault. Couldn't get ready, but it's great to have you guys, and I hope we get a full house, which it doesn't look like right now, but maybe we will. It's quality over quantity. Antonio, okay. Are you still there? I hope so. All right, so here we go. This is what it is. This was the chapter 13 of the project 2025 that she authored. So this is what it is. It's the mandate for leadership. And I know a lot of people are talking about a lot of things that have to do with this, but I read 13. I've read other chapters. And for me, I'm not going to go over the whole thing because I actually found an article I want to start with that I thought encapsulated what I would write my notes on. So here she is. Y'all fired. Yep, there she is. She is just, one of those wonderful people. Yep. But can you believe it? Writing for the EPA. She's not a scientist or anything. So really quickly, this is DeSmog Blog, and they go through her credentials, her background, and key quotes. She wanted to freeing America from the Paris Climate Agreement is a major victory for Americans. Under President Trump, we are seeing the cleanest air and water on record. It's time to keep American energy great. So she's got, and of course, she's speaks with the Daily Caller. She's just one of those, okay? February, she said, the Green New Deal is not a serious proposal. It reads like Karl Marx's Christmas list and is a Soviet-style central planning document calling for a government takeover of the agriculture, transportation, housing and healthcare sectors. So you know what we're dealing with. And Antonio already nailed it, what we're going back to with this person. But she's quite something. So I'm going to quickly do this article because really it was the best one. All of my notes kind of ran roughshod with this. I mean, this was. So I thought, all right, here. It's by Drilled News. I'm going to go over it really quickly because the points that are in here are exactly what's in 13, but written by this individual. I forgot where her name is. But anyway, if you browse the internet or watch TV, you probably heard of it. And I'm going to go down the mandate for leadership. And she says she knows she hasn't been publishing, but she has to publish. So there's a lot of backers, a lot of the Koch brothers, Atlas Network. I mean, there's so much. This will be in the show notes. But the complete Project 2025 manifesto is 900 pages, and it might explain why it sometimes feels like we're hearing about this thing all the time, yet we don't know much about it. So she said she didn't finish it yet, but she's managed to get to 500, including chapter 13, which is what I'm up to. And this is the person, Mandy. Now, I think she pronounces it Gunasekara. Anyway, she's a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation Center for Climate, Energy, and Environment and Senior Policy. Do you see the article, by the way? I don't see it. I don't see that you see it. Hang on a second. I don't see that you see
It looks like it's under Inhofe.
I'm gonna get rid of it. Okay, sorry. Forgive me, guys. I'm trying. So anyway, so this person, she's a visiting fellow. She's also a senior policy analyst for the Independent Women's Forum. Didn't she look like it in that little blue dress? A conservative women's organization funded by the Bradley Foundation, the Sarah Scaife Foundation, and the Koch-backed Donor Advised Donors Fund, Donors Trust. So she's a lawyer, but she had been a member of the CO2 Coalition. You might recognize her as the Republican witness during Representative Jamie Raskin's 2019 Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties hearing, and we just saw her also do that. Well, anyway, she, I'm going to move down. You see how she was with Inhofe, but it would not be remotely surprising to see her tapped as EPA chief in a Trump administration. So we're going to go through this really quick rundown because it was good and it was exactly what my notes were, except for one thing, which I'll tell you. The broad strokes. A Trump EPA, and just in case you guys, do you remember what happened during the first EPA when Scott Pruitt was in charge? And all of the thing, yeah, right, Antonio, everything that was rolled back. And Biden had to really scramble to try to bring back some of the good things. I mean, the EPA, the reason why I called this what I called it, well, let me play it. I'm going to play it.
If anyone here is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself. Thank you. Right. Just a little thought. I'm just trying to plant seeds.
Government and the EPA, you could
maybe,
say.
Maybe one day they'll take root. I don't know. You try. You do what you can. Kill yourselves. Seriously, though, if you are, do. No, really. There's no rationalization for what you do, and you are Satan's little helpers, okay? Kill yourself, seriously. You're the ruiner of all things good. Seriously. No, this is not a joke. He's going to be a joke coming. There's no fucking joke coming. You are Satan's spawn, filling the world with bile and garbage. You are fucked, and you are fucking us. Kill yourself. It's the only way to save your fucking soul. Kill yourself. Plant seeds. I know all the marketing people are going, he's just doing a joke. There's no joke here whatsoever. suck a tailpipe, fucking hang yourself, borrow a gun from a Yank friend. I don't care how you do it. Rid the world of your evil fucking machinations.
And who do you think he'd be talking about today? All right, so we'll continue. That's what I named the show after because he says go suck a tailpipe. And that's how I felt about these people and this organization. Not that, really, it's just comedy and not we want to tell anybody to kill themselves. We just want these people to get lost. So there's my caveat to make sure you knew that. So let me read this a little bit more and we will get down to the nitty gritty. They want to limit the agency's ability to regulate under both Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act. Pause for review, which is cut. Anything that references environmental justice because, reverse racism, and eliminate the standalone Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. Push through the secret science proposal that didn't quite make it last time around, which specifically targets the long-term epidemiological studies that linked air pollution to shorter lives and were used to justify air quality regulations. Politicize the agency, giving all authority to political appointees over scientists. Shrink and defund the agency. Cut the EPA funding of university research. Move away from anything supporting energy transition. Move away from regulating pesticides and agrochemicals. And I read this, and it is, you read between the lines when you read the lawyer speak and the BS speak in chapter 13. So she is, of course, working with Steve Malloy, the Heartland Institute tobacco coal lobbyist. And he has a long-time war on air pollution regulations. So anyway, she has no scientific background. So she needs someone like Malloy to outline a plan like this. Malloy got his BA in natural sciences and then a master's in biostatistics from Johns Hopkins. Although he's never really worked as a scientist, these qualifications still make him uniquely sciencey in the climate denier sphere. So anyway, this is who he is. They have been visiting fellows at the Heritage Foundation. Malloy was on the Trump EPA transition team when I hope I'm saying it right, Gunasekara was an early appointee for the agency. And I was the only person on the team with a background in EPA science. So I was brought on to write the science part of the transition plan, Malloy said in 2020. So that background in EPA science came during the 90s when he was between stints as a science policy director for the National Environmental Policy Institute, which is a lobbying group funded by Occidental Petroleum and a handful of other companies that aim to roll back the EPA Superfund rules, and working as the director of the Advancement of Sound Science Coalition, an organization Tazi worked with PR firm APCO to create for Philip Morris that aimed to poke holes in science linking smoking and particularly secondhand smoke. So you know that this guy is not a good guy. So this is, again, shift responsibility for evaluating misconduct away from its Office of Scientific Integrity, which has been overseen by environmental activists, this is what they say, towards an independent body. Work, including with Congress, to provide incentives similar to those under the False Claims Act for the public to identify scientific flaws and misconduct, thereby saving taxpayers from having to bear costs involved in expending unnecessary resources. We'll talk about that after. Really, what does that mean? What does that mean? And avoid proprietary black box models for key regulations. Nearly all major EPS regulations are based on non-transparent models for which the public lacks access or for which significant costs prevent the public from understanding agency analysis. Imagine that. So she goes after the air pollution regulations from multiple angles. And of course, the buzzword is a conservative EPA, which means everybody will be a political appointee while they say, oh no, political appointees. And oh, another thing. You know what they said? No, this is really funny. She says, everything will be computerized. There will be nothing written on paper. Now, think about that, Antonio. They want to computerize everything, nothing written on paper. But how do they feel about elections? I mean, seriously, it's kind of like, it's hypocrisy at its greatest. So it's pretty bad. And she wants to notify Congress that the EPA will not conduct any ongoing or planned science activity for which there is not clear and current congressional authorization, which means that Congress, which are no scientists, very many uh, pretty much clueless morons, would be looking at all of these EPA rulings, right? So it goes into eliminating the use of unauthorized regulatory inputs like the social cost of carbon, black box, and proprietary models, and unrealistic climate scenarios, including those based on the representative concentration pathway RCP 85. And I thought maybe you'd want to talk a little bit about that, Antonio. It's one of the projected future scenarios mapped out by climate scientists in reports from the IPCC. While those in favor of increasing development of fossil fuels, like her, they dismiss it as unrealistic or a worst case scenario. Actual scientists debate the details, but generally take the projection seriously. So, would you like to take off on that?
Yeah, so what's interesting here is that how we end up getting to the worst case scenario is by dismantling our institutions that would best prepare us and inform us on how to respond to the crises. So, this is the same thing that we saw in the Biden administration when we saw the report on what would be the impact of our transportation system. And what the Trump administration found is that if we did everything that we were supposed to do in terms of the climate with our transportation system,
Mm-hmm.
then we would have the overall effect of possibly keeping the global average temperature 0.25 degrees Celsius lower than it otherwise would be. And so the Trump administration said, oh, what is 0.25 degrees Celsius?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's nothing. So we might as well just throw away the report and not respond to it. Um, but, I mean, honestly, if you think about something like that, let's take that number.
All right.
That's magnificent to think that just the American fleet alone can warm the earth by a quarter of a degree. That's kind of crazy just to know that our daily what do we call them, routes, or our daily commutes are responsible over the course of a century by warming the planet by a quarter of a degree.
And
um,
these people just have no clue.
well, they do. Well, that no,
Well,
Sandy,
she
don't say that.
doesn't. Malloy
No, no,
does.
no, it
You think she
does.
does?
That's the point. These guys know because they're looking at the data
All right.
and they're saying we're going to do it anyways.
I'm going to do it anyway. Even our little Mandy, who is relying on, and I hate to sound like that, but she is relying on Steve Malloy, even though she's an attorney. But all right. Anything else to add, Antonio?
No, I think that was good for that point. I mean,
Okay.
the EPA unfortunately has been under fire by Republicans, and this is really just the latest attack that wants to systematically disable the United States federal response to climate change by dismantling its federal agencies. We saw this attack against the Obama plan, the Clean Power Plan,
Mm-hmm.
and this further does that. I mean, Scott Pruitt was completely off the rails when he was the EPA administrator.
Yeah.
And remember, Scott Pruitt, he got his claim to fame by suing the EPA.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember. Oh, how insane.
so that's the type of gang that we're talking about here. And what they want to do is declog, defang the EPA and other regulators across the economy because they are so, as earlier stated, in the pockets of the oil and gas industry at this point.
Absolutely. And it's the hypocrisy. It's too political, so put a political appointees in charge of everything. For all its squawking about how the EPA has been politicized, 2025 puts political appointees in charge of the Office of Transportation and Air Quality, the Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards, a newly elevated American Indian office to be headquartered in an oil and gas region. Oklahoma, Texas, and Colorado were recommended. The Office of Research and Development, where Gunasekara recommends appointing an empowering a science advisor reporting directly to the administrator, in addition to a substantial investment, no fewer than 6 senior political appointees charged with overseeing and reforming EPA research and science activities. And qualifications for these should emphasize management, oversight, execution skills, and in her case, executing by getting rid of all of the EPA employees. But God forbid we put scientists in charge of the science. Establishing a political chief of staff to oversee the Air Office in general and requiring regional offices to receive approval for them for enforcement actions. Pulling the renewable fuel standard out of the QTAQ into its own sub-office run by a political appointee, and establish an MOU with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Energy to work together to establish RFS regulations. Hello, ethanol. So she also says, she's going to cut the federal budget and giving the states more power, which also is mapping out a system in which state and regional EPAs are entirely under the control of political appointees. And then I'm just going to go down to environmental justice because, of course, they don't want that. It's reverse racism, and they make a big deal about a crystal clear example of why it's important for anyone concerned about acting on climate to tune in and join the social justice fights, because these people don't want it. And they put in charge America First Legal Foundation Project 2025 Advisory Board, which is led by former and current Trump Nazi senior advisor Stephen Miller, and the Alliance Defending Freedom. So the Koch network, all of these billionaires, all of these awful people, Leonard Leo, they're all involved in eviscerating Project 2025. Eviscerating, the EPA through Project 2025. And yes, it's been around, right? Like you said.
Right.
Are we ready to move on? There's a lot of stuff on it. I'm not going to read it all, but I gave you the meat and potatoes. This was a good one. All these will be in the show notes. And it is now Tony's turn. And he is going to talk about the MAGA plan to end free weather reports, the NOAA, and the National Weather Service. So take it away. Let me know what you'd like me to show.
So, yeah, in the Trump administration's latest attack on the National and Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration through Project 2025, essentially what they aim to do is consolidate, eliminate, and privatize the program. And by doing so, what they want is to take core features of the program, particularly parts of the National Weather Service, and put these programs that are right now publicly accessible. If you want to know why you get extreme weather alerts to your phone, whether they be heat advisories, tornado alerts, extreme wind alerts, things like that, that has to do because of the National Weather Service. That's because of federal funds. What the Trump administration, what Project 2025 wants to do is to put services like that behind a barrage of subscriptions, fees, and paywalls in an attempt to get rich quick off of the growing climate crisis. Think about how horrible, how dreadful, how despicable, how deplorable it is to know that as extreme weather crises increase, we're going to need more information from our services. And they're saying, oh, wow, people would really pay a quick buck, a top buck, to get the same services that might save their lives, but now they're behind paywalls and subscriptions. So this is a very dangerous component of Project 2025 to put those type of features behind paywalls, although they're already publicly accessible to people and have saved countless lives across the continental United States, and of course in Alaska and Hawaii as well. I mean, just imagine if in Hawaii, for example, if that fire service system was behind a paywall of subscription.
My
My God.
God, it's
Uh,
insanity, but that's what they
but
want.
but that's but that is what in fact they're asking for. Right now, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration receives about $6 to $7 billion annually in funds, or about 100 times less money than the United States military. Right now, the NOAA, its programs look at carbon and capture programs. We're talking about capping emissions, emission reduction programs. A lot of the things that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration does is in collaboration with our international partners. These are a lot of international expeditions, whether it be putting satellites into space and monitoring our weather and monitoring signs in our climate system, those tipping points that everybody is worried about, or even sea level rise.
Mm,
Or what about all the tools
mhm.
that many of us have come accustomed to use? A lot of that data comes directly from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, such as the Climate Reanalyzer tool, such as the Earth No School tool, such as
Yes,
the Vintusky tool. These are all
all of
tools
them.
that are made possible because of the information that is publicly accessible through these public institutions, through the national academies. And beyond that, the international component to this, that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration contributes to our partners in England, contributes to our partners in Japan, contributes to our partners across the EU, across Australia, and of course to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and to the progress that we've been making globally on this front. So, to really what they want to do here is they labeled it as part of the climate denial industry.
Mm.
What they want to do here is to cut the information head off at its head, because for them, they understand that the national academies, the National Oceanic Administration, the EPA, and others are giving people the information they need in order to combat the crisis and to respond effectively. And what that means is developing a legal and political and legislative apparatus that is going to be quite regulatory on a lot of these industries that have gotten away with polluting the environment, whether it be contributing to climate change or damaging our water qualities and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
Um, and what the Biden administration seeks here in Project 25 is through a cloak of free market fundamentalism, free enterprise ideology, to really dismantle our federal response and our ability to respond federally. And what this will also do is it will cripple the state's individual abilities to
Mhm.
respond as well. Many of the states work in conjunction, of course, with the national laboratories.
Right.
The university systems work, of course, in conjunction with the national laboratories. So this really is a all-out attack on the public sphere, on public science, on the ability for the public to access data and information. And once these projects become, and that's another crucial point that I might add here, is that when these programs become increasingly private, not only are they locked behind a barrage of paywalls, subscriptions, and fees, oftentimes they can fall under within company policy and be completely kept out of the hands of no longer citizens and civilians, but consumers and clients. And we really don't want to commercialize our response and marketize our response to the climate this way, and have to go through a whole. Imagine having to call 1-800 number to deal with just getting climate information now.
Oh my God.
This is
It's bizarre, bizarro world. It's scary.
And this is the sort of almost Twilight Zone politics of the Biden administration and the people who advocate, or excuse me, not the Biden administration, the Trump administration.
Right.
And the people who advocate Project 2025 is that they can look at the depth of the horror of the climate crisis, and then they can use it strategically in some areas as a get-rich pay scheme, and then in some areas could completely neglect and ignore the implications of the data in which they're using to get rich and quick from. So it is pretty scary. It is a profound level of human psychosis that I think if we survive this crisis, we're going to be studying for some time. It does fall into the category of a sort of banal evil at this point, obviously, to understand full well the implications of the sort of policy schemes that you're trying to implement, and then implement those schemes full well anyways, understand how dangerous the implications are, and then realizing that you can actually profit off of that danger.
Wow.
I mean, it really is grim, but really just to think about that, and not have any concern. Remember, we put together the National Weather Service. We put together those tornado alerts, flash flood alert services, because of a history of weather-related trauma and crisis that your countrymen gone through, dying in hurricanes, dying in wildfire outbreaks, dying in flash floods, dying in extreme winter events. Now we have agencies that respond to that, give us up to minute, 10-minute, 5-minute data telling us what is most likely to happen in our area, and that information gets to our municipalities, and our municipalities are able then to make choices to inform the public on what to do next for the safety of their families. And to think now that you're going to have to subscribe to this or that company, you're going to have a silver plan to
privatizing every corner, every aspect of our life, and it's already there. And this is just cementing. I think this is, that's why I call the right the party of human extinction. I mean, it'll just collapse will come faster, because you think about all the weather events that we've seen just last week: Eastern Europe, Poland, flooding, fires in Brazil, everything all over the world. And that's not even what happened in North Carolina. What did your state get? 20 inches of rain?
Yeah, some parts of the coast here in North Carolina was absolutely devastated by this tropical depression. I mean, this is happening. I mean, I sent you guys over in another video. Houses, our coast is just disappearing in North Carolina. As Republicans, just as they are in the state of Florida, telling us that we ought not be talking about not what's just happening to your very eyes, honey. The living room is full of water.
Full of water. Oh, we're floating away, even with the darn stilts. But it is right. But you see, they want to get rid of the FEMA. And also,
Yeah.
they want to centralize the national emergency services for the country, right? And I read about that and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that is, Nicholas has to be doing backflips over this. I mean, the potential is so big for our country and everybody, all right, Gene, I'm going to answer you right now. Okay. The Democratic Party has done nothing that will help slow the warming of the planet. Come on. Are they going to take away the National Weather Service and privatize that? Are they going to do any of those things? No. And so you have to think realistically here.
Okay, I do want to push back against a lot of the doomerism that's going on here. I think this is very clear. Okay, I am not someone who likes Kamala Harris, not someone who likes Joe Biden. I think
Right.
this is I think this is very clear in terms of who is the clear and present danger right now, and that is by far and away not just Trump but the ghouls behind him.
Yeah,
You have to
Stephen
understand
Miller.
they recognize that Trump is extremely incompetent, which is why they're able to forge a plan like this because they
Hmm.
know that the president doesn't have his own plan. He's just going to do whatever we put in front of him. Okay. Especially if there's a way that he's going to benefit from this, which of course he would. So that's what's going on here. And I think people have to recognize the presidency isn't about who you like. Okay, it's about who do you think would be the best opponent for you to fight in terms of getting the things that you think are important done. Okay, and I find that Kamala Harris and the Democrats are much easier opponents in terms of pushing to get the sort of things that we want done. We know that they're not particularly progressive on these things, and
They're not. They're
that
conservatives now. They're almost like Republican light. It's
right, but in
changed.
terms of picking our opponents,
Hmm.
who do you want to fight? Do you want to fight Trump and the 2025ers, or do you want to fight Kamala Harris and the Democrats?
Exactly. I don't even like the thought of living under the Trump administration just for the fact that they are violent people and there are, the things that are happening in our country. Another thing I want to bring up, the what's happening in Israel and Gaza is hideous. It's horrible. We know that. But it's going to be a lot worse under the Trump administration, and they will, no matter what they say about anti-war, they will, all right, wait till what's his name, Jared Kushner sells the West Bank off, which they've already done. There's already been selling of real estate of the West Bank in New York City. So horrible
Uh,
things. But we know a genocide is terrible, but we also know the whole world has problems. And Antonio, you're right. What do we do here?
Yeah, I think the most logical choice is to look at who are the potential opponents, who's most likely going to occupy the White House, and think about who do you think is going to be easier in terms of pushing toward the type of world and policies that you want to see. And then also, I think we have to recognize that even if Kamala Harris and the Democrats aren't progressive, that they're not moving in our direction, they're not actively trying to destroy the atmosphere, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration or the EPA. I mean, they certainly do mishandle these organs quite often. But again, completely dismantling them, privatizing them, bidding off programs to their favorite friends in private industry. That's not something the Democrats do. What the Democrats often do instead is that they hijack the administrations or sometimes they blunt them. But that's on the whole a different level of corruption and civil distrust than what the Republicans are trying to do here. The Republicans are going straight for the goal. I mean, they're for the jugular, and this is a different type of fight. So I think if we would be wise, if we care any at all about ourselves, because a lot of these things directly impact us, the sort of things, even when it comes down to baby formula, the sort of chemicals that the Trump administration were allowing to enter into baby formula due to their deregulation
Yep.
schemes. I mean, meat packaging. I mean, all these things impact us, not just the climate. And believe me, you, something we say at the South, uh,
Believe me, you.
that this deregulation is a framework for every industry in the United States, not just the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and EPA. So this is a blueprint, and I think we would be wise to understand it that way, and we'd be wise to respond by trying to block the Biden or the Trump administration from regaining power, and the people who are leading the 2025 project, namely the Heritage Foundation folks.
Yeah, they're horrible. And I wrestle with how I feel about a lot of this. And I just keep coming back to the same thing. And I'm going to say it right now. I want to ask a question out there. So I want to know what do you all think of the Green New Deal as Doomers? What do you think about the Green New Deal? Because I have a point I want to make, and I don't want to argue with my chat. You know, um, I want to try very hard to push people, but I want to know what you Doomers think. Put an answer in, and I'll put it up, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking. And we are. What do you think of the Green New Deal? And I want people that are Doomers to answer because
Yeah, I would
okay,
be interested
all right,
with their
it's bullshit. All right, right? It's bullshit. Okay. What else? What else? All right, and yeah, the only left wing politics left in America comes through the Green parties. The Republicans went insane 40 years ago. Democrats have spent most of the time since pretending to be left wing. Okay, but what about the Green New Deal? All right, I'm gonna make my comment here. Y'all might not like it. It's election time. So the Green Party, who has merit, they're right now they're the big anti-war party. I have a lot of respect because I'm anti-war, but I'm a balancing act here on how I feel about it. But yet Doomers are supporting Jill Stein, but at the same time feel the Green New Deal is a bullshit, okay? And the Green
Yeah,
New Deal is going to destroy the planet. So which is it?
I think that is just a sort of cultural pessimism that seeps in. And this is extreme because I'm a cultural pessimist, but this is a sort of extreme pessimism. Okay, um, you know, is the Green New Deal a silver bullet plan to fix what's happening with the climate? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
Is the Green New Deal the best response that our generation of humans can give to this crisis? I think so. I think people have to understand that even if we were to do this right, this is not a decadal or century long project that we're engaging in. This is the retooling of our entire relationship with the biosphere. That
Yeah.
starts with a Green New Deal, it doesn't end with one.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make my point, guys, because, there's a lot of issues on the table. And again, while I hate what's happening in the Middle East, it's not the only game in town. Yes, it's disgusting. But the world has problems everywhere, and our country is where we live. We live here. We need to rid ourselves of MAGA once and for all. At least the Donald Trump wing. And then now that we know what we're fighting against. We want something different. We don't want a duopoly. We don't want a two-party system. We want multiple parties. We want viable parties. We want to get rid of the Electoral College. How are we going to do it when the fascists, Miller, Bannon, when they have it all? How are we going to do it? I would like to know. How are we going to do it? You know? And I love you all, and I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to just say, this is how I feel. But I have respect for everybody in the audience, of course. Tony?
Yeah, I think that those are all very salient points. And I think what bothers me about this moment is I certainly do feel the distress. I feel the pain. I feel the hopelessness. I feel
Yes,
the
it all hurts.
especially as we look at the images coming in from Palestine, I think none of us are disillusioned in realizing that um, the road ahead, regardless if it's Trump or Kamala Harris, does not look good for the Palestinians. No doubt that
No,
road.
it's horrible.
No doubt, no doubt that road looks so much worse under the Trump administration, and actually potentially for the world. I mean, this conflict has the potentiality to spiral.
It's
And I think
already.
that it
Already.
very, very much so is. And I think that people really underestimate the reality to that. I'm not going to say that Kamala Harris is the answer or things would necessarily get better, but I know for a fact that things would get dynamically worse under a Trump administration, particularly one that wants to feed without restriction, without hesitation, without any safeguards, weapons to Benjamin Netanyahu, who I see is basically an Israeli Trump.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, a horrible person. But besides that, they're in this country, and I know we started with the EPA protections, but friends of ours are frightened for their lives in the LGBTQ community. People we know. There are places in the country where people are being told to take names of anybody who has a sign for Harris and for after the election. I mean, we are living in a very sick time. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for. I'm just saying that we have a poly crisis. And
and I would say this also because the thing that scares me is that Kamala Harris is in her administration is really such a weak vanguard here because if you have Democrats who get in office, recognize the existential danger, and then kind of just do nothing, keep the status quo, well, what they show is that they're ineffectual. And then that strengthens the opposition the next time around. So it's very dangerous that we might get locked into this cycle. Of course, next time around, it's not going to be Trump, but that's just it. I mean, Trump really is
the cult.
a better evil than what we could possibly get. I mean, we really could get as Ron DeSantis, someone who is much more competent in terms of manning the political apparatus of the United States and weaponizing it in a much more effective way than someone like Trump. And that's coming. I mean, Trump isn't going to be able to run for president forever. And so what I would tell people is it's not simply about voting for Kamala Harris. If we don't push these Democrats to do the right thing, then we essentially just kick the can down to a much worser avenue.
Yeah. Well, I have a comment from Gene again because I want to comment on this also. The Democratic Party accepts Dick Cheney now into the fold. He sees where the Dems are going and he likes it. Okay. I have another view on this. First of all, she doesn't have control of who is endorsing her. And have you ever thought that it's not like they love the Democratic Party? Have you ever thought that all of those warmongering, horrible people like Dick Cheney are seeing that they would like the end of MAGA and they want their Republican Party back and they will jump ship from the Democrats once MAGA is defeated and they will go back to being who they were, the neocons. Turn it around. I don't think the Democrats, they may say thank you. They're trying to win an election, but I don't think that they are welcoming war criminals with open arms. I think all of those people that are endorsing the Democratic Party are desperate never Trumpers to try to end MAGA. Not necessarily that they agree with Democratic policies or that the Democrats want their policies. Do you think that we agree with anything Liz Cheney really cares about or her policies? No, she's a conservative. But everybody recognizes at this moment in our history, with a looming, horrible 2030 to 2050 apocalypse, what to put, Antonio, that this is what's happening. These people are seeing that the change has to come. Agree with me or don't disagree with me, but try to take a walk on another side. Try to take on a different viewpoint. Not that we are opening, the door for horrible people. They just see the existential crisis of MAGA and the cult. Thank you, David. I just want people to open their minds to all different things. Everybody always talks about how everybody's not, people are not, you're not influenced. We're all influenced. That's why we all have our worldview. We all come from a different worldview. Antonio comes from a different worldview than me. Everybody. Jean, Gary, Bila, Darren, all of you, Robert, all of you. But we've got to step back from our emotions. We have to step back from our ingrained thoughts and beliefs and look at the bigger picture. Take the look from the 10,000 foot high view. Tony?
Yeah, I agree that it does take a moment to take a step back and see what's going on. This is very emotionally charged. We are making some of the most important decisions in the whole of our species.
Yeah, we are. We really are. And we illustrated it with the EPA. We illustrated it with the National Weather Service that the world relies on. The NOAA. What else is going to be gone? How many of these federal agencies, like I said earlier, they want to get rid of the emergency management. And the other article that I had pulled up for you, Antonio, was the insurance companies.
Oh, yes.
We don't love big insurance, right? But let me see if I can pull this up. You can look at this article. Maybe you want to talk about that. Now, of course, I can do a whole show on big insurance and how disgusting they are. Here's the article. You want to take a look at it?
So on my phone, I literally can't see
All right.
any.
How about
way.
I just give you the real quick would be a plan by politically conservative group to dismantle the national flood insurance program if Donald Trump is elected has been met with approval from private flood insurers. Yeah, because they don't want to pay out. But sharp skepticism from economists and insurance agents who say such a move would disrupt home sales and property insurance across the country. It would mean the collapse of the lending market, said John Gardner, owner of Lee County Insurance Agency in Fort Myers, Florida. They just need to fix it and stop talking about fixing it. So basically, the Heritage Foundation said they want to end federal flood insurance. So if you live in a flood zone, and you have federal flood insurance, you will be out of luck. How many people know this?
Well, what they're saying is, again, it's this trying to profitize off because those federal flood insurance, of course, is subsidized. What they're trying to say is, listen, because private insurers, if they're forced to insure these people, think about the premium that you're going to have to pay. Think about the deductibles you're going to have to pay. These are the sort of things that are going to really make people think twice about where they live, if they can afford their home anymore, if they can. I mean, these are really big questions. And again, municipalities are being robbed of their federal collaborators in dealing with a lot of these crises and trying to lead them up to the private market. The private market is very cruel. The private market's either going to find that the risk assessment's too high, that these properties are too high risk, and so they're going to vacate those market areas, or we're going to see surcharges, surpluses, and huge premiums, huge deductibles for people who are in those areas. What we're going to start to see is changes in coverage policy, and this is really going to be very upsetting for homeowners because a lot of this is going to come to them as a surprise. People who are now 5, 10 years into their mortgage and they still have 25, 20 years in their mortgage are going to be shocked to find that they're going to have different cover policies as a new insurance regime comes in, because the reality is that the sort of risk assessments that were taken at the initial design basis of a lot of this infrastructure is just no longer valid. And of course, insurance companies are recognizing that because they're having to pay out as we're facing more extreme weather.
Absolutely. Well, we have some more comments, and Ernie, I love Ernie. Are we too far gone to turn things around? Everybody always asks us that. Well, Melanie's actually answered it. We are going to be entering Mad Max meets Waterworld meets Handmaid's Tale meets Demolition Man meets RoboCop meets Don't Look Up. Oh my gosh, Melanie, that was great. That was great. And you know what, Melanie? You that gets the flush of the day because we want to flush all the bad shit.
Uh,
Not to flush the comment, it was good, but that's the environmental coffee house flush of the day. So, yes, there are huge problems, and I brought up things that I knew would trigger some people. Fine, trigger,
sure.
but stay with us because that's what we're doing here. We present everything under the environmental umbrella.
And it's important to have your views challenged and your perspectives challenged because this is a challenging time.
And I'm having mine all the time. Here's a comment again by Jean. There could be government price controls. Antonio, you know the history of those.
Yeah, I definitely do think that government price controls could be a measure, a tool that the government could use in different ways. Um, but that's not really what we're talking about, I suppose, in this case. And we're really just talking about the agencies themselves
Hmm.
being under attack. Um, but yeah, I mean, certainly those are mechanisms that I think the government can use, particularly dealing with inflation or increases in food prices, which we are starting to see that as climate change is bearing its ugly head, and we're getting out of the pandemic economy. We're still having a lingering inflationary effect, and a lot of that has to do with the impact of climate change.
Yeah, it does. Um, is there a network of open source Met observation stations that will just move in and replace all this?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
If I wish that
Absolutely
were the case.
not.
Um, People don't understand the private industries in the United States only exist because we have such a robust private sector. The robust private sector is the backline, is the backbone of all of our private industries. Name any of them.
You're
Their
here, Jeff.
fundamental technologies come from the public sector, whether that's Apple, Boeing, SpaceX, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft. It doesn't matter. Amazon. Most of those technologies were developed in the public sector and then they were commercialized in the private sector, with branding and advertisement and fancy little gizmos to make people feel nice because it's shiny and clean. But the crux of those technologies are developed in the public sector. And this was well understood coming out of the Second World War that if the United States wanted to maintain its competitiveness with the Soviet Union, it was going to need a robust national federal program in the sciences and maths and technological development.
Yeah, well, are we getting that? Are we going to? They want
Well,
to abolish the
this
Department of Education as well.
right. This is a threat against all of that. We are unlearning all of the lessons of the last century in terms of how to govern our civilization. We're going back to the era of industrial robber barons, where industry said it can run the country. Whatever is good for industry is good for the country. America's business is business.
Yeah, America's business. Yeah, it's business. All right. Yeah, it's business. Well, I tell you, I think this has gotten to be a very interesting discussion. And we started out with the EPA and we started out talking about Mandy. And we looked at what will happen. And now we're going to go with some questions. Tommy has a question here, and then we'll read a couple of super chats. Will Americans be able to access weather and climate data from the European Space Agency's Copernicus satellite constellation if Project 2025 is implemented?
Well,
If we're
you'd
not
be able to,
blocked.
right, you'll be able to do so through those European connections. But again, in the United States, those public access points would move behind private paywalls. So, whatever that means.
Yeah, private walls. Yeah, will we be like another country that does not, let their citizens get out of the country to see other things?
And a lot of times, what will happen is that because these agencies are not designed to be profitable, so when we talk about privatizing them, we're really talking about compartmentalizing them. And so they might throw up a $25, $50 paywall with no intentions of profiting from that, knowing that all that's going to do is just block access. Like people are not going to say, oh, this is not worth $25 a month to see like what is the latest CO2 number in the atmosphere. I mean, and you have no idea the trickle down effect that will have on public information and knowledge.
Yeah, well, we're seeing that the hypocrisy. We see that they scream about free speech, but when it's not speech that they like on the right, they'll want to curtail it for us because, after all, you know, we're Marxists, and I love that. I love that. I wished at the debate Kamala had asked Donald, "What is a Marxist?" It would have been all over. But we're in trouble. We are in trouble.
Oh yeah.
So I had an inter like a I'm not going to play it now though because we have been an hour and we have a very interested and invested chat which I'm really glad about. And I want to say thank you, Nadia. $10, thank you. The right is very international. 1930s Germany only had Japan, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Today, Europe is Gladio ruled, and the third world is just CIA dictators. Power to avoid going over cliffs is unlikely. Tony, thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. It's a
She
little hard
puts
to say.
she puts a lot in there. She's a historian like you.
Yeah.
I learned from
Um,
Nadia.
Certainly. I think the most important thing here is how civilians, that social contract, our relationship with the government in terms of expectations, in terms of our rights, in terms of its responsibilities. I think all of that is now in question. And I really think what Project 2025 wants to do is at its heart is change the essence of that social contract, the sort of responsibilities our government has to us, and the expectations that we have to our government.
Yeah, we know Nadia's freaking brilliant. Yeah, we do. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jed. Lordy had the shit get so effed up. How? Oh, okay, there's the. Okay, tell us, Antonio. Give us the whole narrative. Oh my gosh. All right. Emerald View. Hi, hun. They want hate speech to be rampant and unassailed. They want calling someone a racist banned. I don't know. Who wants that?
Or
They're already doing it. They're already doing it. And Donald, I just want people to understand that we are not all in this together. We are not going to die together. The rich will definitely outlive us. Don't kid ourselves. I know, Donald, you say that all the time, and I tend to agree. And,
yeah,
the EPA, believe it or not, the things that'll happen will just make it worse for the neighborhoods that are right in the line
and we've
of
talked about this apocalyptic scenario before, and
mhm.
that's why I want to draw attention to the intentionality that the people behind Project 2025 and the Biden and the Trump administration, they're fully aware of the implications of the science. This is their retreat, is to rob the public treasury,
Mm,
dismantle it, and lock the doors behind themselves. That's what's going on here.
yeah, that's heavy. Lock the door. They can live in a little. They can live a little while longer in their bunkers. Whatever.
Yeah.
I did my bunker baby video. Yeah.
I
I don't know. You guys see my
gotta go
bunker
back and
baby?
watch that.
Yeah, bunker babies. That was last year. That was last
Uh,
year. All right. So where are we now that we covered a lot of things? Got everybody emotional. Got everybody
oh,
thinking. Ask questions. You know,
sure.
I know I rattled a few sabers. Saber rattler. Okay. The number six, everyone talks openly of great things they have read, and no one ever says the things that are better left unsaid. You're funny. He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. Note your consciousness does not die with the loss of your body. That's a comfort in these terrible times, actually, if you think of
Thank
those.
you.
Gary! I was at a beautiful memorial service today for a dancer who, oh, wow, who
She's
her wonderful radical communities of care around dance. There was no hate speech there, just a whole lot of loves from elders to babies. Gary is a beautiful person. Thank you, Gary, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really hope that we did spur discussion. Antonio, would you like to leave with anything profound you'd like to say about all of these things that are concurrently happening with our poly crisis?
well. I don't know if it's going to be particularly profound, but what I will say to people is that as the election is coming up, we do have choices, and I'm not going to begrudge anyone for the choice that they make. I understand that
No,
they're,
me neither.
but I will ask you again, in terms of who do you think is the opponent that you can most easily fight and push in the direction of the world that you want to see? Who do you think that person is? Who do you think that administration is? Um, and who do you think will be much, much harder in terms of fighting, in terms of even trying to preserve the world that you want? I think you have to think about it in those type of terms.
I think that's a beautiful way to end because those are the terms that we have to think about. And I'm afraid that we will not have any voice of protest left. We will not have any women's rights. We will not have anything that resembles what we've had for the last 50 years that I've lived through to fight for. And it'll be a scary world. And we don't want to see that. So, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Sorry about not having the show last night. I couldn't get it together. I had, obviously, I'd been away and had a lot of cognitive dissonance about flying, which Lyle Lewis made me feel a lot better by saying, listen, it's a done deal, fly, but I don't want to again. But I went through my guilt because I try to live my life by not doing things that I know are going to harm the planet. But I'm not everybody. And like Sam says, if your seat ain't, your ass ain't in that seat, someone else's is going to be. And I made my 90-year-old mother happy. And it was my brother's birthday. So, yeah. All right, sweethearts. Thank you so much. Most likely be back on Tuesday. Antonio, thank you. It actually worked out really well, even without Wi-Fi. We didn't have a glitch.
There you go.
No glitches. All right, guys.
5G.
And thank you, Veg. And I just want to put up what he said. We can't lose our humanity because of this insanity. We must do everything in our power to stop them. And then after we stop them, we must do everything in our power to make change. And if we're going down with the ship, we might as well go down with class. We might as well go down with women's rights intact. We might as well go down with opportunities, even if the climate crisis is so big that it is not going to be fixed, whatever. We might as well try. And that's what I have to say. I love you guys more. You know it. Thank you, Antonio. I'm so happy you joined me. I really am. So, see ya on Tuesday. Show notes will be in there. And I love you all. So, good night. Thank you for moderating. Kim and Looney. And Jean.